Good morning and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 AM 96.5 FM KXBX. Bill Kearney in the studio with me. I'm Paul Thomas, and a Happy New Year to everyone. Our first Health Talk show of 2018, and big things in store for you, Bill. And what are you looking forward to this year?
Staying alive.
I think a lot of people are feeling that way right now. There's a lot of sickness going around.
Oh, we're going to talk a lot about that. There is this flu has just taken over in a rapid fashion, and almost everybody you talk to has either going through it or gone through it. And it takes the form of a cough that just rocks your whole body, and then the fever that you have that has been fairly short-lived as far as the length of time that the fever is going on, but wears you out completely. We went to Bodega Bay for the holiday weekend with a couple of other couples, and rented a house over there. And there were people just getting over it, there were people just going through it, and there were people just getting it in the 3 days we were there. So it's very contagious. It just makes you miserable as far as the cough goes, and that's probably the hardest thing, is to get that cough to stop. And then it isn't a productive cough in the very beginning, and eventually it turns into a productive cough. We have been giving advice on what to take for a fever. Of course, just ibuprofen or Tylenol or aspirin. You get a headache with this too, so you have to be careful if you're taking warfarin or something, some kind of a blood clotting medication, that you're really careful about your Coumadin dosing or warfarin dosing. So, but other than that, an anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen or a Mucinex product that can be generic, sitting right by the Mucinex with dextromethorphan in it. And so you have guaifenesin, which helps break up the congestion, and dextromethorphan, which helps the cough. Excuse me, and you have to take it about every 4 hours. So it definitely makes it more comfortable, and then you get to the point where you're just virtually exhausted, and you just want to sleep, and that seems to do as much good as anything. Then you start taking this cough medicine, and you wonder whether you should be taking it or not taking it. If you have a chest infection and are coughing up a storm, the first thing is usually to reach for the cough medicine, but it might sometimes do more harm than help. If it's made of chemicals that have different uses, some are used to block the cough reflex, others loosen and thin or decrease the amount of mucus in your lungs. And the question is, do they follow through on their promise to make you feel better? And that's a tough one, because you have symptoms coming from every place. Even though you can find cough syrup in any cold medicine aisle, there's no good evidence they do much good. In fact, we just had a blurb out from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, saying any child under 12 years old don't give cough syrup to, because it's not effective, and side effects could do more harm than good. The problem is you don't just get a cough syrup anymore. You get a cough syrup that has an expectorant in it, a cough suppressant in it, an antihistamine in it, and a decongestant in it, and you may not need all of those drugs to treat what you're having. Part of the problem might be, as annoying as it is, that coughing is actually healthy when you're sick. So it gets material out of the lungs that doesn't belong there. I had my wife about 2 weeks ago, we talked about it on the show last week, had a cough, and she only has one productive lung. So that lung kept filling up with phlegm, not leaving any room for oxygen, and she had a difficult time breathing, and finally she was able to actually vomit out that phlegm that was in her lung and leave room for air to get in there, and was much better. Clearing phlegm out of your lungs by coughing really helps rid your body of the infection more quickly, and it did in her case. She still had a little bit of the cough, but as far as the rest of the symptoms that went with it, the sinus infection and the headache, those were pretty much gone. So if you need to suppress a cough to go to sleep or stop freaking out about your coworkers, stick with cough drops instead of liquid cough medicine. That's all I've used since I had this stuff, and the more and more of the cough medicines do not say for cough anymore. They say soothe, soothing the throat, and I don't know if that's because there's been a change in how they label their products now, but I always get something like Halls, which tastes like a bad cough syrup, and even though they have sweeteners and they have cherry and lemon, and I get the one that's the most like a mentholatum or like a Vicks. Those drops of liquid cough medicine for anything help as well as a cough syrup, and even any hard candy really will kick up your saliva and soothe your throat. So plain old water will also help, because fluids thin out mucus to cut down the coughing. So there's other reasons, of course, that you could be coughing, and one of those reasons that we forget to tell you about, or we tell you about and then you forget because you don't have the symptoms, are some blood pressure medications. And we talked to you last week about HCTZ being a problem, which is a diuretic, a basic diuretic that you take for blood pressure, for getting melanoma, because it causes a photosensitivity reaction out in the sun with a lot of people. In this case, if you recently started a new blood pressure medication and it's an ACE inhibitor, it could cause your cough to stick around longer than you like. A cold isn't the only thing that causes a chronic cough, and at least 20% of the people that develop a dry cough from an ACE inhibitor within a week after they start taking it. And that's why I say, we tell you about it, it doesn't happen at the time, and then when it happens, you forget that we've told you that might be a problem, and it can take up to 6 months to disappear, and it's not productive. You're not coughing up anything. You can't make it cough up anything. They don't know why it causes a mystery 20% of the time. They feel like maybe it's an accumulation of irritants that stimulate the airways that are usually metabolized by ACE inhibitors. An ACE inhibitor is something like lisinopril. It is actually works by dilating the blood vessels, and when they open up the blood vessels, the heart doesn't have to work so hard to pump the blood through, and that's how it helps in blood pressure. If you don't need medication to lower your blood pressure yet, consider eating healthy foods to lower your blood pressure. And we go back to the same thing, and you're going to hear it several times today about health and diet, health and diet, health and diet, because when it comes to about everything you want to know, that or a disease state that you're going to have, it's going to involve having a healthy diet and exercise. Well, if you're trying to recover from the flu, and many people are right now, because California is one of the worst states. You can infect others from one day before you get sick to 7 days after it begins. 49 states and Puerto Rico, either regional or widespread flu activity during the week ending December 23rd. It's even worse the week that ended on the day before New Year's Day. 12 children have died due to the flu season, while a total of 2,500 hospitalizations related to the flu. Nearly 9 for every 100,000 people have been reported so far. So The highest rate of hospitalization were people 65 or older, followed by people 50 and 64. One of the reasons is we're not as healthy as somebody that's 35 to 50 years old. We start having failing to exercise as much because we hurt. We don't take as much time exercising and paying attention to how healthy we are because things don't taste as well as they did before. Experts really believe that the virus is spread when a sick person talks, sneezes, or coughs. Symptoms include fever and chills and cough and sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, muscle and body aches, headache, and fatigue. You don't need me to remind you what these symptoms are because they're much different than just a cough. They're much different than just a cold. You don't have a fever with the colds. So if you believe that you're coming down with the flu, the CDC has steps that they recommend. Some should see a health provider immediately because you can get what we call inhibitors that are antiviral medications that if you take them within 2 days of contracting the symptoms of the flu, they slow down how fast it moves and the intensity of it. And given within 2 days of getting sick, the positive test result for the antiviral medication to be prescribed is adequate. So 3 such prescriptions are approved by the Food and Drug Administration and available at pharmacies with a prescription: Tamiflu, Relenza, or Replivab. So people considered to be at high risk for compliance includes people that are hospitalized, people who are with severe or progressive illnesses, cancer patients, HIV patients, nursing home or health facility patients, children 5 years old or younger, adults 65 or older, women who are pregnant or within 2 weeks postpartum, people with asthma, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and serious disorders. The asthma thing prompted a little story that happened to me yesterday on the way home from Bodega Bay. And I was driving 55 miles an hour, Paul, as you know that I always do.
Sure.
And was going down right after the Sebastopol turnoff. I missed it. And this truck and one of those air dome trailers was on my tail, just bugging me to death, you know, right up against me. And I would go a little faster, and he would go a little faster. And so finally, I got to a hill, which was like the one coming from Ukiah down to Blue Lakes, nice and long, where usually a highway patrolman sits when you're coming from Ukiah. Yep. Well, I guess they do that in Sonoma County too. So I passed this little truck that was going so slow. And by the time I get down to the huge bottom of the hill, I was doing 77 miles an hour. Didn't realize it, and this guy was right behind me. He passed this truck too. So I couldn't really slow up because he was right on my butt. And but as soon as I started up the next hill, the CHP person turned around, made a U-turn, and tried to pull the trailer over, but there wasn't any place for them to park. So I had a feeling he was after me, so about a mile later, when I could finally pull off the Bodega Highway there, I pulled off, and the trailer pulled off behind me, and the guy had his lights on flashing. And so, but he walks right past the trailer and the truck and walks right up to me.
Of course he does, yeah.
And he can't stand out in the highway because I'm right on the edge of the highway, so he comes up to Deanna's window, and she rolls it down and says, can I see your driver's license, please? So I handed him my driver's license, and he said, can I see your proof of insurance? Hand him the proof of insurance. And he says, can I see your registration? And of course, I'm shaking like, you know, so I said, I know it's in here. Oh, just don't worry about the registration. I can call it in. I said, okay. So he starts lecturing me on, you know, I was going, you were going over 20 miles over the speed limit, and that's very dangerous. And he said, I saw the guy tailing you. And he said, I thought and I can understand how uneasy that was making you, because I was watching you, and you were speeding up, and he was speeding up, and then finally you passed, and then he passed, and he said, so I'm going to issue you a citation. And I said, well, there's nothing else you can do. I realize that, but this is why I was doing it. And he says, so he goes back to the trailer and the truck and is talking to them for about 15 minutes. And he comes back and he says, you know, those are really good people back there. He said, there's a medical emergency. She's having an asthma attack. And he says she needs to get to a hospital, and I was going to tell him I was a pharmacist, but he saw my license plate that said Northlake Pharmacy on it. And he said, I've got to get medical help for them. He says, I'm going to let you go. He said, you guys are both 75 years old. You're both, intelligent. You know better than to do that. I know why you did it. I know why they did it. And he said, I'm going to let you go. He says, I understand what it was, but he says, you've got 20 good years left. I don't want you to lose it on the highway. He said, so just observe the speed limit. Don't go over 55. So I was talking about this people having asthma attacks and having a problem with getting this flu, and that is part of it. So this coughing and breathing is really part of it. So now I'll get back to the medicine part. So, but again, other people should just stay at home and rest and not go to the coast. Because when we got into Bodega Bay, we went into a restaurant. I'm telling you, everybody was coughing.
Yeah.
Everybody was coughing. And you had to wait for 25 minutes as you're standing in this line of everybody coughing on everybody else. So, and part of this is avoid close contact with others. And I'd been in the Bodega Bay for years, and it was really, really crowded. So we drank plenty of fluids. Some of them weren't the right fluids, but we treated the fever with over-the-counter medications, including Tylenol, which is usually pretty safe, and ibuprofen, which is fairly safe if you're not allergic to aspirin. And then if you have trouble, you can call your health care provider and try getting them on a holiday weekend. Not usually very effective. So we kind of heed emergency warning signs, especially in kids, and we do something about it when we see a doctor immediately, or trouble breathing, or fast breathing, or bluish skin color, not drinking enough fluids, not waking up, wanting to sleep all the time. And that happened to one of the people in our party, and I said, just sleep. If you remember last week when I was on the air, I told you that I went to bed at 7 o'clock at night and woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning. My average sleep time is 4 hours. I woke up and I felt so much better. And almost everybody, not everybody, but most people, we've done more flu shots this year than we've ever done. And now we've run out of flu vaccine, trying to get more, but don't know if it's available yet. A lot of people were still closed yesterday from the wholesalers where we were calling. And you don't want to get too much because people, you can't send it back. It expires in April. I was explaining to somebody in our party that said they didn't get it until April last year, and I said, well, it's expired. But there was some last year that didn't expire until June, so what's really measured isn't what happens when you get the flu, because many times it's different. There are variables on the vaccines, of course, and if you still can find some, the last 2 doses I had left was the very high profile one that was twice as concentrated as, it was quadrivalent, but twice as concentrated as the other one. You don't need a prescription to get a vaccination from a pharmacy if they have it. You just walk in and roll up your sleeves. So a lot of people are going to be uncomfortable for a while yet. The really peak of flu season normally doesn't happen until February, March, and April. So there's a a huge influx that's quickly moving west. It seemed to be taking the southern parts of the states and all the way across, and then the western parts, the upper east northeast doesn't appear to be near the problem, but I could imagine if you were one of the 200,000 people on Times Square on New Year's Eve that you probably had a lot of people coughing on you. So you are going to be going through some problems with what's happened to you in the last month or two since Halloween, and then it's vacation time with Thanksgiving, and then it's New Year's and Christmas and Super Bowl. And a lot of people don't wait till after Super Bowl because that's one of the biggest snack days of the year. So, and you're going to want to take your blood test and find out if you have a statin, need a statin, or need a high blood pressure pill, or you need something to keep you from gaining weight. Besides diet and exercise, that's always the last thing that we decide. But I will tell you that on the coast this weekend, everybody was walking. It was, we got there on Saturday afternoon, and it was 65 degrees. And both Saturday and Sunday, people were walking, playing golf in shorts. Monday, it got a little bit less nice as far as that goes. And then by Tuesday morning, it was starting to be cold. So we're going to be getting some bad weather here in the next few days for us in Lake County. So it's a time to be careful and take care of yourself, and try not to underdo as far as eating for the few weeks, and take care of yourself. And when you go see the doctor, there are questions that you need to ask. And one of the things that that I just thought was too much, there was a thing on one of the professional websites that say you should ask doctors all these questions. First of all, doctors don't have time to answer 13 or 21 questions. But when you're taking a specific drug, it gets a little easier to ask questions about a specific drug. In studies released Monday in the Annals of Internal Medicine, researchers found that the Canadian Cardiovascular Society guidelines would recommend statins to the greatest number of Danes, and 44% of this was, it said Canadians, now it says Danes, in about 44% of those between 40 and 75 with no history of cardiovascular disease. The most conservative number came from the European Study of Cardiology and the European Arteriosclerosis Society, which jointly convened about 15% of the same population sample. For example, American groups, the ACC, the AHA, those numbers came to 42% and 31% respectively. So what it has done, and we talked about this a couple of months ago when new guidelines came out for people taking statins. And this is what happens. You're 25 years old and your LDL is fine, your total cholesterol is fine, your HDL is fine, and then you continue to eat and drink and exercise and take care of yourself the way you think is healthy because everything is fine. 20 years later, you take those tests and nothing has changed, and all of a sudden your LDL is up to 140 or 160, and your total cholesterol is up over 200, and it starts affecting the cardiovascular risk that you have, and you're more likely to die without taking a statin. And then you've heard in the last 20 years that statins have been around that more and more people are taking them, and you're hearing about more and more side effects. One of our party that was with us for New Year's is entering that 60-year time period. Still, cholesterol is now just a little bit elevated, and the LDL is a little bit elevated, and the HDL is fine. The physician wants to put that patient on a statin. The patient is a person that uses alternative medicine a lot, will take Western civilization medicine when completely needed, but has a lot of questions. And with statins, you have every right to ask some of those questions. One of the problems with the statin is a increasing amount of muscle pain, and to the kind of muscle pain that can be fairly disastrous when it comes to you performing just average daily activities. So the first thing that we caution a patient about when they go on a statin the first time is, or they change statins, is be aware that this could cause a muscle pain. I mean, so bad that you could hardly get in the bathtub, that you have trouble mowing the lawn or pulling weeds and those kind of things, and you don't know whether you want to take this or not. Plus, we always advise you that in a year you're probably going to take a liver function test, what they call an LFT, and find out if it's damaged your liver. And then, reluctantly, we tell you that it might affect your memory. Now, I just saw, it was either yesterday or the day before, Anderson Cooper was being interviewed by Dr. Gupte, I think, that from CNN, and Anderson was 46 years old, and he'd been taking a statin for over 10 years, and he said, geez, I was concerned about the memory loss. He says, I'm forgetting stuff, and the doctor says, well, you got to remember you're getting older now, and that's when you start losing your memory on a lot of things, but it could well be the statin. And usually, if you catch it, it's reversible. So a lot of physicians, as much as the amount of statins is being increased as you age, because they want to stop that level from causing earlier cardiovascular stroke or risk, some physicians are saying when you get to be the age of 70, there's no reason for you to take it anymore. And so there's a conflict in best practice guidelines here, and some people are taking themselves off statins. Now, I'm sure the physicians in 3 or 6 months will ask for another blood test and find out whether or not it's a problem or not. When it comes to memory, that's entirely up to you and the physician. But if it's the point where it's causing a problem in your life, and at a certain age, we all start having, recognizing people's names and remembering an event or what day it was, or some things just stick there, some things are gone, it seems like, immediately. So you start having trouble just because of the natural decline of brain cells dying as you begin to age. But you also can accelerate that level by taking statins. I happen to not take any statin medication, and I have a perfect LDL, a perfect total cholesterol. My HDL is way too low. Your HDL should be in the high 40s or low 50s, and mine's in the 20s. That's your good cholesterol. So that helps fight cardiovascular disease too, but there isn't any medication that can really elevate your HDL level. So you're kind of left with diet and exercise there, and hope that helps. There are critics on taking medications for primary prevention of a stroke and a heart attack that don't actually have symptoms. There is a difference from secondary prevention from the use of statins to prevent heart attacks and strokes who've already had one. And this is case out of a lot of people that have had a stroke or a heart attack. And when the new guidelines that came out for best practices about a year ago, they began prescribing 80 milligrams of atorvastatin when you had a stroke or a heart attack. 80 milligrams until a year or two ago, out of thousands of patients we have, we only dispensed maybe to 6 of them 80 milligram atorvastatin. 10 was the most common, some 20s, some 40s, very few 80s. Now it's the drug of choice after you've had a surgical procedure affecting your heart, or you've had a heart attack or a stroke. So, and then you look at the information from when you're asking the doctor about these sidelines and they're giving you the results of the test, you're asking who did the test. Unfortunately, the laboratory tests that we get done on a basis when a drug comes into effect, or they need to the FDA needs to have a new diagnosis okayed, are done by the drug companies that make the drug. And so there is a hidden interest there in for them to have that test come out in a positive manner. And if you think that these drug companies anymore are that dependent on bringing out the truthful results of a test if it's negative, you have another thing coming. I'm not bad-mouthing drug companies as much as I do insurance companies and PBMs and chain pharmacies, but I am telling you that you can't always depend on what the results of the tests are going to be. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how your body fights back when you diet. As we begin another year, we're going to have to make many choices in our lives. With the economy still struggling, we all have decisions to make relating to our health. My name is Bill Kearney, owner of Northlake Medical Pharmacies. Healthcare is one of the many items that will be changing again this year. At Northlake Medical Pharmacies, we're striving to give you more for your dollar. We're still selling and renting durable medical equipment, including lift chairs, walkers, wheelchairs, and transport chairs. To help you with your healthcare decisions, we have qualified healthcare professionals that will be able to answer your questions. We would like to help you whether you need a prescription for a medication, a wheelchair or walker, an immunization to prevent a disease, or simply regular drugs, gifts, and sundries. Northlake Medical Pharmacies is the place to shop. Northlake Medical Pharmacies, with 2 locations for you, at Hill Road next to Sutter Lakeside Hospital, in the front of the Bruno Shops Barn on Lakeport Boulevard.
This is the Caltrans Road Information Bulletin for Lake and Mendocino County State Highways for the week beginning Friday, December 29th. There will be no planned work the 29th through the 1st in observance of the New Year's holiday, but crews will respond to emergencies. In Lake County on Route 20 east of Upper Lake on the 4th, a company could cause 5-minute delays. And on 175 west of Red Hill Road on the 2nd and 3rd, a company could cause 5-minute delays. In Mendocino County on Route 1 near Millbank Resort, expect 5-minute delays. On Highway 101 near Ridgewood Ranch Road, expect 15-minute delays. And near the Hermitage Vista Point, expect 10-minute delays. On 175 near the Lake County line, expect 10-minute delays. And that wraps up the Caltrans Road Information Bulletin for Lake and Mendocino County State Highways. Please remember to check your route before you go, online via QuickMap or by calling 1-800-GAS-ROAD. Please be safe out there and drive for the conditions on the road. Like us on Facebook for more updates and info on the type of work we're doing. That's Caltrans, District 1.
West Shore Little League is excited to announce the 2018 baseball and softball signups online at westshorelittleLeague.com or at the Lakeport Elementary School cafeteria on January 20th from 12 to 4 p.m. Ages 4 through 16, $75 first child, $65 second, $55 each additional child. New players to the league need to bring a copy of their birth certificate and proof of Lakeport, Upper Lake, or Lucerne residence.
Raising your family, tending to your animals, growing your own produce, preparing for the seasons, living the country life. Hi, I'm Jody Henke, host of Living the Country Life. Catch me every Monday through Friday at 9:35 a.m. and 4:35 p.m. for ideas and inspiration for your place in the country. That's Living the Country Life here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX.
We bring the community closer together, supporting business in every way. We're helping make your dreams come true, working hard for you.
The Lake County Chamber of Commerce would like to recognize their member of the month, Tom Lincoln, from Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency. Lincoln Levitt Insurance Agency insures hundreds of local and out-of-county businesses, providing such coverage as fire liability, business auto, workers' comp, umbrella liability, director and officer liability, and group benefits. It also provides a full line of insurance products to local farmers and agribusiness owners. To request an insurance review, Tom and his staff are located at 650 North Main Street in Lakeport. They can be contacted at 263-7162 or through the website at lincolnlevitt.com.
Lake County Chamber of Commerce, we're steady and strong, help us shape the future.
All right, we're back.
Well, Paul, you know, a lot of people have to diet all their life, and it's always a difficult time, especially at this time of year. And your body kind of fights back when you diet, as hard as you try. Cutting calories just doesn't seem to lead to long-term weight loss or health gains. The diets don't work. The evidence is clear as can be that cutting calories simply doesn't lead to the act of losing weight for a long term. The only people who don't seem to appreciate this are the people who've never dieted. So it causes psychological changes that make it hard to continue. And those of us who have dieted feel it. We suspect most dieters have realized this by now, and yet here we are again setting the same weight loss goal that we had last year. The only people who don't seem to get it are those who never dieted, so it's particularly hard for them to believe because it doesn't square with their own eating experiences. For example, this Nikki that's talked about in this article eats sensibly much of the time with some junk food here and there, but doesn't really seem to affect her weight. She's not a dieter. She's naturally thin. It's not surprising that she believes what she sees with her own eyes and feels in her own body, but that isn't the way it is for most people who are dieting. There are researchers who've been studying the diets for a long time. We've seen that diet failure is the normal way things go. We've also studied the stigma that heavy people face and witnessed the blame game that happens when dieters can't lose the weight and keep it off. From a scientific perspective, we understand that dieting sets up an unfair fight that we keep the weight off, but we understand that it's something that we have to deal with, and we're not sure how you deal with it. People like this Nikki, she's thin because of the way she eats, but actually genetics play a huge role in keeping her thin. You've known people that just eat like horses, and they never gain any weight. They eat all the wrong stuff, and they still continue to stay thin. It actually means that after eating the same foods and using that energy to run the systems, the skinny people have more calories left over to store as fat. So to actually lose weight, they have to eat less food than her. And then once they've been dieting for a while, that changes their metabolism, and then they need to eat even less than what they were to keep losing weight. What we normally do when we've lost that weight and get off that regime, we start eating normally and healthy, and the weight comes back on faster than it ever did before. It's not just this Nikki's genetic metabolism that makes her think dieting must work. She finds it easy to ignore that bowl of Hershey Kisses that her coworkers eat, and but for dieters like those Kisses are jumping up and down saying eat me, because that makes you more likely to notice food than before dieting, and once you notice it, those changes make it hard to stop thinking about it. There's been time after time that my wife has said to me, just have a cookie or have a potato chip, and I'll say, no, because I want more. We were coming home in the car yesterday morning, and she hadn't had breakfast, and she got a bag of potato chips, and she says, I can't eat all these. Will you have some? And I said, no, because I'll eat more.
Keep eating them,
Yeah, next thing I know, I had a handful of them,
Yeah.
So.
And driving's the worst,
Oh,
too,
yeah.
because I know that when we were going down to the Bay Area this last weekend, we had beef jerky and chips and nuts and,
Sure.
and
All the good stuff.
all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't just eat one, you just
Yeah.
constantly munch, yeah.
In fact, if you're a dieter, you like them even more than before. And that's why, because other diet-induced changes that make food not only taste better, but also cause food to give a bigger rush of the reward hormone dopamine. And that's the same hormone that's released when addicts use their drug of choice. But the skinny gal does not get that kind of rush from food. And besides, she's full from lunch. And here again, we face an uphill battle because dieting has also changed their hormones. Their levels of so-called satiety hormone, leptin, go down, which means they aren't as hungry. And they felt hungry on their diets all along, but now even hungrier than before. And even Nikki's regular non-diet lunch wouldn't make dieters fill up at this point. So where's your willpower? Well, anyone can resist the food under certain circumstances if you don't notice it or if you don't receive a reward from it. But even though she doesn't need willpower, if she did need it, it would function quite well because she's not dieting. So on top of everything else, the mental changes and the psychological changes when you're dieting isn't something that you normally can control. It disrupts cognition, especially executive function, which is the true process that helps with self-control. So dieters have less willpower right when they need more, and non-dieters have plenty. And of course, even if Nikki were to eat those tempting foods, her metabolism would burn up those calories much faster than from a dieter. So it's too bad the skinny person is given credit for succeeding at a job that's not only easy for her, but it's easier than the job that you face if you're dieting. And it is cruel. The cruel irony that after someone has been dieting for some time, changes happen that make it hard to suddenly stop dieting in the long run. It is physically possible, and a small minority of dieters or cheaters who manage to keep the weight off for several years, but not without a demoralizing and all-encompassing battle with their physiology the entire time. And you have a different compassion, and I'm a person that has to diet. And it's easy to see why dieters usually regain the weight that they lose on their New Year's resolution, and why we have suggestions for you when that happens. If you're a Nikki, remember the self-denial these dieters have subjected themselves to, and how little they were eating while you were treating yourself to the decadent desserts. Be impressed with their efforts, and be grateful that you don't have to attempt it. If you're a dieter, remind yourself that you aren't weak, but that you were in an unfair fight that very few win. Change your focus to improving your health with exercise, and resolve things to choose a different New Year's resolution next year. But think of this. The older we get, the more we hurt. The more surgeries you've had. I think I've had 9 of them in 20 years. The more you hurt. The older you are, the more advanced the arthritis gets. The older you are, the ability to metabolize food as quickly as it did when you were working all the time doesn't exist. And so you're kind of a catch-22 on what do I do now? And other than give you some encouragement to to try the diet and exercise, I don't know what you can do, because, you know, we're genetically born at a certain genetic disposition, and I was in a family that was overweight, and my dad's family was overweight, my mother's wasn't, but in our family, because we were raised on a farm, we ate real butter, real cheese, real beef, real pork, real fat, and a lot of it. You know, we were a hard-working farm family, and until I got away from that environment, but I still had the same habits. I was talking to somebody the other day when I lived in Chicago. I said I would, there was a, I can't remember of the name of the chicken place, but it was a chicken place that delivered, and I was living on the near north side. I would get a little bucket of chicken and a pizza to eat at night when I got off work, because I was working 2 pharmacies for Walgreens, and I blossomed to 245 pounds by the time I was drafted. I could hardly walk, you know, so they took care of that. They you know, when it comes to diet and exercise, if you're in the Army or Marines or probably any form of the service, they'll take care of that for you. They will diet you, and they will certainly give you an exercise program that's unparalleled when it comes to losing weight. So I went from 245 pounds to 165 pounds, and then they wanted me to play football, and so they got me back up to 185, and I think when I went to Korea and Vietnam, that was the weight I was at. I still can wear my combat clothes that I wore 50-some years ago. So, but now I got good news when we're talking about gaining weight. There is a skin patch that could prevent weight gain. And if you've fallen victim to this holiday weight gain, it's likely that adopting a diet and exercise are on your list. But according to a new study, however, a simple skin patch could one day help us shed the pounds. Now, get that, one day, not now. There's a university in Singapore that's created a skin patch that can convert potentially harmful white fat into energy-burning brown fat. Now, this method, or this knowledge of white fat and brown fat, has been around for a long time. But in a recent study published in the Journal of Small Methods, researchers reveal how the patch reduced fat mass and weight gain over 4 weeks in mice fed a high-fat diet. The study came from the School of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering at Singapore, and colleagues say that their novel creation could offer a non-invasive strategy for the treatment and prevention of obesity. And you now what has become so promising and expensive is doing bypass surgery, either making the stomach smaller or changing your body so you can only hold so much food and get rid of it quickly. They've discovered how to convert white fat into brown fat, and the new study begins a strategy on becoming one step closer to reality. The skin patch consists of hundreds of microneedles that contain one of 2 drugs. Now, this won't mean anything to you, but it's a beta-3 adrenergic receptor agonist, which is currently used to treat overactive bladders. And then a T3, which is a form of thyroid that's used to treat an underactive thyroid gland. Just those 2 drugs, a drug for bladder control and a drug for underactive thyroid. These drugs have been shown to convert white fat into brown fat in previous studies. This patch is put on the skin for only 2 minutes, and it's filled with needles. The needles become embedded and start to degrade. The drugs are gradually delivered to white fat under the skin, and they convert the white fat to brown fat. When the researchers tested the skin patch in mice, they were fed a high-fat diet for 4 weeks. With the embedded microneedles in the skin of the mice, the surrounding fats started browning in 5 days, which helped to increase the energy expenditure of the mice, leading to a reduction in body fat. In fact, these researchers witnessed a 30% reduction in weight gain and fat mass in these rodents. When they used these two drugs orally, and if these drugs are used orally like they are for those diseases that we talked about, overactive bladder and underactive thyroid, they can produce severe side effects. However, their patch provides a very safe alternative. The amount of medication that's used in this patch is much less than those used in oral medication or an injected dose. This lowers the ingredient cost substantially, while the slow release minimizes the side effects. Overall, the researchers believe their findings could offer a new way to fight obesity and one of the biggest public health burdens of our time. I think now it's either 37 or 47%. So this data should encourage phase 1 clinical studies in humans to translate these findings to the bedside, with the hope that these microneedle patches may be developed in an established, cost-effective way for the prevention and the treatment of obesity in the near future. This is a unique way to do it, and what's the most unique, besides being in a patch, is that you only leave it on the skin for 2 minutes, and the needles become embedded in the skin and start to break down. So I don't know how fast that's going to progress. Probably by the time I'm 90, and I probably will not have any weight left at that point. Excuse me. But nevertheless, it's a thing that's going to be in the future, and they're still looking at it because it's becoming an epidemic in our society. Diabetes, #1, and because there's so much obesity. And then number 2, diabetes. In a way, I kind of hate to talk about this, but you're going to be faced with this so much this next year. And Big Pharma, which is big pharmacy corporations, are under attack for drug prices, and that started an industry war. Who decides what you pay for medicines? It's not who you think it is. More than a third of the list price of a medicine is rebated back to the middleman, which are the insurers and pharmacy benefit managers. I'll have to tell you just a little story about this. About a month ago, I was having a store meeting, and I emailed the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and all of the senators and congresspeople from California about these PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, taking so much money from pharmacies after they'd reconciled their prescriptions. In other words, they showed you you made a profit, and then 3 to 6 months later, they took $1,000 away from that drug, which maybe only cost $50, and you never knew it was going to happen. So as far as I'm concerned, that should be illegal. You know, at least let us know when we fill the prescription on the screen that we are actually losing money. And we won't stock the drug anymore, probably. You can't afford to sell something, and I've gone over this with patient after patient. The patient doesn't see the difference. They just take the loss. And we've talked about that on this radio show. Well, I wrote this letter to one of our congresspeople and said that I needed, this had to stop. We needed people to observe what we're doing, and Congress shouldn't okay taking this kind of money away from us. She actually wrote me back last week and said, thank you for the letter about taxing small businesses. You know that's always been on my agenda for a long time, and I'll do what I can to give you that kind of support. Well, I wrote her back, and I said, I guess it was a senator, and I said, Senator, I'm more than happy to hear from you. However, I did not write to you about taxing small business. I wrote to you about the pharmacy industry, PBMs, and DIR takebacks. Was a good guess, Senator, but not an accurate one. She sent me an email back saying, I don't respond to your emails. If you want to talk to me about something like that, give me a call. Well, what do when you give them a call? You give them a call, and they'll say, she's busy, you can talk to her aide. And you talk to the aide, and it sits on the desk as it would have if I'd have talked to her personally, and because I'm not of her party. But the drug companies fight with PBMs all the time and insurers, making it a multi-industry chamber of accusations. This has been a year of finger-pointing when a nonprofit organization that receives funding from insurance and drug companies, they're flooding the zone. They become that big pharma also. PBMs are for-profit companies that negotiate drug price discounts on behalf of the insurers and the employers. They include giant companies like Express Scripts and CVS Health. Not to make that price better for you as a patient, not to make that price better for the provider. They give that money to PBMs, not-for-profit companies, and for-profit companies, instead of who they were designed to by the Medicare D Act that came about. They make money from the fees paid by insurers and employers and by taking a cut of the rebates they negotiate. Now, when we get a prescription that we are losing $60 on and we call that company, they tell us, fill the prescription or you'll lose all your business from that company. I said, you couldn't be in business if you were losing $69 in filling a prescription. If you were selling a car, if you were selling a shirt, if you were in retail at all, selling a product and losing more money, the more you fill, the more you lose, they said, fill it or lose it. Now, you may think as a subscriber to that insurance company and that PBM that it's better for you, but eventually there won't be any more big insurers like that. There will only be a person or a group like CVS who owns their insurance company, Anthem, owns their PBM, CVS, Express Scripts, and owns the provider. So PBMs say that they typically pass along 90% of the savings, then they negotiate it to customers. I can't tell you a customer that I have that will tell you they got any money from a PBM. They point to data showing no link between drug price growth and rebates and point out that drug companies are the one raising prices. So the odd fact is the drug price is not one number. It's whoever you are and however much you buy. They do not carry published list prices. If you go on the internet and you try to find out what you're paying for a drug, it will be a different price for you than it will be for somebody else. It's so convoluted and complicated. When I go give a talk to a group like Rotary or CSRS or the Chamber of Commerce, I can't even tell you how to get around that roadblock. The PBMs have grown in power and profitability over the 10 years and become a huge force. The drug companies, they're the ones that raise prices. It's a synergistic relationship between the two. We've got two bad actors. We don't have one. I had told the senator that we were going to decrease the amount the customers were paying in the next 10 years to $35.4 billion. Well, she's going to help me reduce the tax thing on small businesses, which I didn't even ask for. So if they save $654 billion in prescription drug spending, they'll take the money. They're not going to give it to you. So Most of those high deductible plans never see the benefit and pay the inflated price. Are we on time, Paul?
We're just about wrapping up right now. In fact, I think we're done.
I'd like to remind you, we're North Lake Medical Pharmacy with 2 locations. The 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192. And outside the Bruno, Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard. Give us a call there at 263-1328. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Bill. See everybody back here again next Wednesday for Health Talk on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXPX.